Welcome to Take the Ring, everyone. Today is Saturday, August 15th, the cursed year of our Lord 2020. I'm going to talk about some relevant news for the channel and in the Twin Peaks community, and I'll give you all an opportunity to ask questions and make some comments. I'll go through a bunch of stuff and then we'll get to your questions and comments at the end. So ask me anything in the chat, especially if it's about my videos or super geeky Twin Peaks stuff. I appreciate it. I will try to oblige when I get through the stuff that I want to share. Everything I mentioned will have links put in the description, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel if you're not already. And I appreciate everybody joining me today. I recently dropped a new video called 3 Days in Twin Peaks. It's a short documentary I made about my trip to the Snoqualmie Valley last year with details and history and all about the Twin Peaks filming locations in the area. It's my latest video and it's living on the front page of this channel if you want to check that out if you haven't. Just want to say the response has been huge and I really appreciate all the great feedback and support that I've gotten. Super duper special thanks to WelcomeToTwinPeaks.com who ran a feature on the video and the Take the Ring channel as a whole and did an interview with me. And he also hosted the online premiere when it was released on June 30th. Also, a big thanks to my longtime collaborators, Nick Ramey, known as The Composer on Instagram, who he created some original music for the video, and Jay Dowell, who is a voiceover artist and audio producer who did the mixing and engineering. Helped me out with that. Both of those guys are colleagues of mine and I appreciate their continued help and support. I was also fortunate enough to work with Stephen Miller of TwinPeaksBlog.com. Stephen is credited as technical consultant, which basically means he helped research and fact check, and he also contributed some still photography to the video. TwinPeaksBlog.com is, if you don't know, invaluable resource, and I would say the premier spot to find information about Twin Peaks shooting locations, props, history, and all kinds of stuff. It's an amazing site that Peaks fans will be citing for years and years to come, I'm sure. It's incredible. Check it out, TwinPeaksBlog.com. Some super exciting news. I was recently a guest on the Twin Peaks Unwrapped podcast where we discussed the making of 3 Days in Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks Unwrapped, of course, is a top-tier podcast who have interviewed everybody under the sun from the series, cast, crew, community contributors, and I was very fortunate to get to talk about my journey with Ben and Brian. Those guys are great. I'm sure everyone knows about Twin Peaks Unwrapped. You can check them out at twinpeaksunwrapped.podbean.com or wherever you get podcasts. I think they're pretty much everywhere. They also put up their show on YouTube. You can find a link to the interview they did with me on my channel, on my On the Web playlist. So on the front page of my YouTube channel, you know, you have different playlists like the episodes and the features and stuff. I have an On the Web playlist. So when I go do interviews with other people and other channels and I show up on or contribute to other YouTube content, I will link to that on that playlist. They're also hosting a series of rewatch events on Cast Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern. You can follow them on Twitter at Twin Peaks Unwrapped for more details. They've been having some special guests. They just finished up the original series, Fire Walk With Me and The Missing Pieces, and they'll be restarting on The Return, I think next week. I'm not 100%, but they should be doing that soon. My plan is to join them. Sometimes Friday nights aren't good for me, but I am really craving a season 3 rewatch, and they're getting ready to do one. So hopefully I'll be joining those guys on some watch-alongs. Also, they published a great book, this one right here, with Scott Ryan of Blue Rose Magazine earlier this year. It's got great excerpts, interviews, again with cast and crew, as well as collected thoughts from the Twin Peaks community, including myself. Every hardcore Twin Peaks fan should pick up this book, in my opinion. Also, I recently joined Cameron from the Obnoxious and Anonymous YouTube channel for his Twin Peaks Thought of the Day series that was on July 15th. And we also discussed my 3 days in Twin Peaks video, his upcoming fan film Queen of Hearts, video editing in general, and a bunch of other stuff. That conversation can be seen on Obnoxious and Anonymous YouTube. Cameron has been one of the earliest and biggest supporters of this channel for sure. And I would encourage everyone to follow and support the Queen of Hearts film. If you don't know, it's a Twin Peaks story, basically going to be a full-length feature Twin Peaks story centered around Annie Blackburn, the character Annie Blackburn, and it will be coming out later this year. And also coming up, I will be a guest on the upcoming episode of the Talking Backwards podcast, discussing the Mark Frost novel, The Secret History of Twin Peaks. We are recording on August 22nd, next Saturday, and it'll be up some point after. I think they're shooting for the 29th. So keep an eye out for that. You can follow Talking Backwards at anchor.fm/talkingbackwards. And they're also on Apple Podcasts. Really excited about this because if you know me at all, I really like talking about the Mark Frost books a lot. Talking Backwards is a newer podcast out there, and they're newer, relatively new, probably within the last, I don't know, 6 months maybe. And so it's really cool because some of the hosts are watching the series for the first time as they're recording these episodes, meaning some of the guys haven't seen The Return yet. So that's a perspective I love hearing, and I've talked about this before that I really want to talk to people that are seeing season 3 for the first time and getting kind of a totally fresh perspective. Also, if you're watching it straight through from the original show to The Fire Walk with Me and then go right into The Return, I'm super interested in what people's thoughts are, just because a lot of The Return and how we feel about it comes with the distance of that 25-year gap. So we have preconceived notions about what it was going to be. We have what the original series was in our mind and how we remembered it versus, plus the different, like the stark difference. I mean, this is the new one is totally a David Lynch thing of nowadays. So as opposed to David Lynch is a different artist that made The Return than the guy that made the Twin Peaks pilot. So always interested in hearing people's perspective that are going from one to the movie to the season 3. Oh, so that being said, we are going to be doing The Secret History in the context of its 2016 release, meaning no season 3 spoilers. So what does this Secret History have in it right out of the gate? Because that came out at the end of 2016, and it was almost 6 months or something before The Return came out. So anyway, interesting. It's going to be interesting to talk about it. It's going to be hard for me to talk about it without trying to discuss what we eventually found out in The Return and how they link together and all that stuff. So that'll be interesting. Speaking of interesting, there is a virtual conference that's been announced. I don't know a ton about this. I'll put the link in the description, but a virtual Twin Peaks conference is being held by some overseas organizers, slated for June of 2021. A call for papers has been issued for It Is in Our House Now, Twin Peaks The Return first online conference. And this is something I'm really super pumped about. Basically, it's organized in partnership with Lynchland, is a blog at Cork University in Ireland, University of Bordeaux in France, University of Liège in Belgium, the Supernatural Studies Association, and the French film magazine La Septième Obsession. This international online conference will focus on the 3rd season of Mark Frost and David Lynch's acclaimed series Twin Peaks. This season is yet to benefit from an international conference that is interdisciplinary in scope. We are excited about the conference's accessible online format and its potential to engage with international colleagues in diverse fields of research. They've got suggested topics here: the role of time, use of the special effects, Homer's Odyssey, electromagnetism, parallel universes, the atomic bomb, mythology and spirituality, representations of gender and race, We welcome papers from the fields of television, film studies, art history, literature, sociology. So basically they want 300 to 500 word abstracts submitted with your CV, and they'll be limited to 20-minute presentations. So I've been to Liège and Bordeaux, and I love Europe, and I was really excited about this conference, and I like the angle that they're going with and the topics they want people to discuss. I am not an academic, or a professor or anything like that, but I do plan on writing something and submitting for it. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know. So I'm currently writing a submission. I would encourage others to submit as well, especially if you're in film studies or something like that. I think it's a great idea. I hope it's a big success that will spawn another healthy round of Twin Peaks theories and observations into the world. So yeah, I'm real excited about this international conference. This UK artist named Sean Longmore created this Japanese style movie poster for Fire Walk With Me that's fantastic. And I ordered one, and it came in the other day, and it's really, really well made piece of work. He put images out on Twitter, and based on the response, decided to do a run of prints and sell them out of his Etsy shop. I'm flattening it out right now, but it came with a like postcard size that doesn't have the type on it, but this is what it looks like. And then on the back side, there's this blue rose design that's pretty awesome. You can follow him at That Tall Ginger on Twitter. The 11x14 one is gorgeous. It's got, Japanese writing and, film credits on it, and the billing block. And on the back side, it's got the second print on the back side that's the chevron pattern design, and they're individually numbered. Like I said, I don't know if he's got any more, but I'm super excited. Just look at this. It's just amazing. Just amazing. Came out great. So I'm gonna flatten this out and get it framed, and maybe I'll show you the big one next time. And speaking of artwork, comic book artist and Take the Ring friend Josh Howard's latest Indiegogo campaign for his indie comic T-Bird and Throttle was successfully funded. Where do I start with Josh? This guy, he started posting Twin Peaks comic art while the return was going on, and I was immediately hooked. Basically kind of a return style comic book. I was way into it, and so I ordered that set of prints. He also did a series of pinups to Audrey and Shelley and Laura, and he did some collages with a whole bunch of characters on it. So I approached him a while back about doing some pieces for my 4th episode, The Town of Twin Peaks, and he delivered these just incredible pieces of the log lady and her husband. I used this to animate the log lady's backstory as it's written in the Secret History novel. Oh, and circling back to Twin Peaks Unwrapped, Josh also did the cover art for the Twin Peaks Unwrapped book. Yeah, he's a great friend to his channel. You should all follow him at Joshua Howard on Twitter. And you can visit joshhoward.bigcartel.com. You can check out his prints for sale, and including the awesome Twin Peaks stuff that I just mentioned, some of those pinups and collages. He just reissued some of those. Speaking of books, in the Blue Rose magazine, writer Courtney Stalings has a new book coming out called Laura's Ghost, Women Speak About Twin Peaks, which I haven't ordered yet, but I'm really excited about it. It has a foreword by Cheryl Lee, which will be profound, I'm sure, and a special essay written by Grace Zabriskie, who of course played Sarah Palmer. Particularly jazzed about this. Grace Zabriskie is one of my favorites. Interviews and things that I've read with her are always pretty insightful, especially when it comes to the David Lynch stuff. I am also currently reading Conversations with Mark Frost by David Bushman, which I am loving. Laura's Ghost and Mark Frost Conversations are put out by Scott Ryan and Fayetteville Mafia Press and are available at bluerosemag.com. Also want to say that Blue Rose Magazine is still putting out print issues, and issues 14 and 15 are up for pre-order. I think hardcore Twin Peaks fans need to support this print magazine. There's not many print magazines left, and it's really cool to have print stuff, especially when it's devoted to your favorite topic and mine, like Twin Peaks. They put out tons of great stuff over the last few years, including issue 6. I called this issue 8 somewhere, I can't remember, I misspoke. Issue 6 is titled "This Is Where We Live." I used this to plan my Snoqualmie trip and making the 3 Days in Twin Peaks video. So this specific issue, which you can get fairly cheap, has basically all the locations in the Snoqualmie area, and they've got addresses and coordinates and basically everything you need. You can just pick up this magazine and take it with you to Snoqualmie and North Bend, Fall City area, and you should be able to find pretty much everything you need to find. This has a Palmer House feature in Everett. Mary Reber's in it. There's an essay about the Palmer House in it. So anyway, if you're going to check out the Blue Rose magazine and you're not sure where to start, issue number 6, This Is Where We Live, is a good one, especially if we ever get out of this COVID nightmare and we can all start traveling again. And if you guys want to go to Snoqualmie, check it out. Before I get to questions and comments, talk a little bit about the future of this channel. I don't really want to say too much, but so while I know no one is in a particular hurry to give me money, I am planning on relaunching my Patreon. So I have one, but it's not, I never put any work into it, but I want to relaunch it, and hopefully before the end of the year. So I have a bunch of cool stuff that I've kind of been putting together. I think supporters of Take the Ring that throw me a couple bucks a month would like this stuff. I keep putting this off because, like my videos, like I really want this to be cool and worthwhile. I know what it's like having every YouTube channel you watch ask for you to support their Patreon or whatever. So if you're giving somebody money, like, you know, the Patreons that I subscribe to, it's because I get cool stuff. So basically I'm trying to put together some cool stuff that you're like, yeah, I'll give $1 a month so I can see this or download this or whatever. Like, you know, I want it to be good for you guys too. So anyway, I'm working on that. Some reward ideas I'm thinking about include an exclusive remix of the Twin Peaks theme that I did with composer Nick Ramey. Nick helped me make the music for the 3 Days in Twin Peaks video. So this is kind of cool. So we, this remix of the Twin Peaks theme is kind of a down-tempo, hip-hop style remix of the original theme as we know it. And this was created for the 3 Days in Twin Peaks video that I did, but it kept getting a monetization flag. I tried every trick in the book to cut it up and change things and do whatever, and it just wasn't working. So if you notice, the Twin Peaks theme doesn't appear anywhere in the 3 Days in Twin Peaks video. That's because Warner Music recently clamped down on it pretty hard, it looks like. So I chopped it up, I changed it, I used a little bit, I used a lot. I tried all these different things and kept uploading demos of the video up. And I couldn't even get away with a 10-second clip. And it wasn't a copyright strike, but it's a monetization flag. So basically, if I use 10 seconds of the Twin Peaks theme in my half-hour video, I would not be able to claim any of the ad revenue for it. It's not a lot. I don't get lots of views. I don't make a lot of money on this. But even that being said, I'm having issues with Google right now. I'm owed some money for the last few months of stuff, and it's an unrelated thing. I don't know why this is happening. So that's its own thing. But using the Twin Peaks theme and the Warner Brothers monetization claim, it's not a lot of money, but I wasn't going to give Warner Brothers $100 because I used 10 seconds of the Twin Peaks theme. Not happening. So I ended up completely cutting it out of the video, but I still have this awesome remix. You know, so it's got like a drum beat and there's like a breakdown and there's like some cool stuff. So it's like, you know, a couple minutes of the Twin Peaks, reimagining of the Twin Peaks theme, if you will. So I have some unreleased footage from my Snoqualmie trip that I want to set to the Twin Peaks theme remix. So that's an example of something that I'll probably put on my Patreon. Because I mean, that I literally can't put it on YouTube. I've also been approached by an artist, I can't say who just yet. This guy made some awesome Twin Peaks art. and he reached out to me, and he's willing to donate a bunch of prints to help get my Patreon kind of back off the ground. So that might be a thing where if you sign up for, $1 a month or $5 a month, maybe your name will go into a thing for a drawing, or depending on how many prints I get, we might do like the first 20 people that sign up on Patreon will get these prints. I'm not sure, but they're really cool, and I'm working with him, and it's really nice of this guy to reach out. But until that's solidified, I'm not gonna go too much into that. But so we got a remix video and some unreleased footage and some artwork. We could do previews of my upcoming videos. I could do some exclusive chats. I've got high-res downloads of all my infographics and the ring and the Laura Palmer diary pages, high-res downloads of that kind of stuff if anybody's interested in that. I've also got some unreleased audio interviews. Again, I can't say who just yet, but I've done some audio interviews that I think people would really like. So that's another example of something that might be on my Patreon. So as far as actual videos for the channel, I'm hoping to have 2 more done by the end of the year. So I'm actually working on like 4 of them simultaneously. So I've written 3 or 4. One is 100% written. One is 75% written, but I've already started editing, putting footage to that. One of them is something I've had on the back burner for a long time, but it's finally clicked and coming together. And I had from a previous editing session, I have a bunch of that stuff put together. So I've kind of got my fingers in 3 or 4 different videos, and you will definitely see 2 of them before Christmas. You're absolutely going to love the next one. You guys are gonna really, really like it. But that's all I can say for now. So I appreciate you listening to me ramble. Let's look at some comments and see what's happening. A lot of praise for 3 days in Twin Peaks. I really appreciate you guys are checking that out. I worked really hard on it, but you guys all seem to like it. I saw you on Obnoxious Anonymous talking about your project and his project, Queen of Hearts. This is Star Magnet says, it's coming out soon, and since you said you read the script, what can we as Twin Peaks fans expect? So it's true, I am one of the few people that have read Cameron's script, and I read it way back before he'd even actually started shooting it, I think. I can't really say because he's gonna I don't want to spoil anything. So based on the trailer, Twin Peaks characters that you know and love, and it works with the show if you want it to, and it'll stand on its own. It is a really ambitious script, and I tried to talk him out of it. And he did it anyway, and it looks great. The stuff that I've seen so far, it looks great. There's a lot of scenes, a lot of dialogue, a lot of story. Other than a couple of scenes that he couldn't do because of the pandemic here at the last minute. Yeah, it looks great. You guys will like it. The Dominitri said, just started The Return again, 3rd time through. This viewing so far, I've enjoyed it the most and got the most out of it. Yeah, I think The Return gets better every time. I mean, I'm one of the people that just didn't like Dougie Jones the first time around. Just could not. It's like I didn't hate him, right? Like I didn't hate Dougie, but like didn't like Dougie Jones at first, because I don't think anybody did, because everyone wanted Cooper back, and we didn't get Cooper. We got this other thing. Watching it again, I think he's hilarious. I think Dougie Jones is the distilled goodness of Dale Cooper, and the distilled goodness of Dale Cooper is kind of trapped in this body that can't quite figure things out. I get something new every time I watch it. It's interesting. Dougie's super interesting. If you think if you watch it and think that that's the good Dale Cooper kind of trapped in there, kind of trying to work things out, as opposed to this just like quirky comic relief character that's meant to frustrate you, it's interesting and a lot more enjoyable. And I kind of feel something different about Dougie Jones every time. The return gets better every time. I agree. Patrick Rayleigh says, I enjoyed Dougie fine the first time, but he gets better with each rewatch, no doubt, both in intention and performance. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and about Tree Fit, he said the same thing. Dougie was frustrating the first watch through. Yeah, oh my God, what are we doing? Like, they're messing with us on purpose. They're trying to make us angry. Then I realized, man, there's more going on with with Dougie. It's not super deep or anything, I don't think, but like there's little stuff like, you know, I mean, Janie E and the kid, like the family's all broken. It's all, everything's bad. Like, because the real Dougie Jones, the original Tulpa created by Mr. C, that looks like the president with the bad hair and the big suits and the banging hookers and all of that stuff. He's not a good guy, and the family's like falling apart. And then Cooper Dougie shows up, who can't talk, who can barely function. Just the power inside of him starts healing the family. And you can go kind of that sci-fi angle. It's like, oh, it's the good power of Dale Cooper is seeping out into, you know, into the family and making everything better. But then there's also kind of that real world application. Like, you know, Cooper Dougie there's a lot to be said about just being present, like being a good father. Like a lot of it is just being there for the kid. So the kid loves him instantly because he's there and he smiles and he gives him the thumb up and he listens to him and he's silly, and you know, so it's really kind of like a heartwarming thing, even without the supernatural element. Mr. C Dougie is out sleeping with prostitutes and gambling all their money away, and he's never around. Cooper Dougie shows up and the family starts coming back together. You know, it's kind of a beautiful thing. Gio Goku said, I saw the series and the movie during quarantine here in Greece, March and April. It was a life-changing experience for me. That is awesome. Jeremy B said, Firewalk with Me is so underrated. I agree. At this point, I wouldn't call it underrated. I think it's underrated as its whole career. But with the box set that came out in 2014, and then the Criterion Award, I think that movie has finally gotten its due. I think that majority of David Lynch fans really like it. I think that, you know, I think that quote unquote mainstream audiences are kind of seeing it again for the first time kind of thing. So it's definitely, it's light years ahead of where it's ever been as far as critical reception and acclaim and fans liking it, that kind of thing. My friend Mr. Booth says, hey Jeremiah, keep up the great work on the channel. Any thoughts or insight on potential release or what to expect from the upcoming Hazel Drew documentary? I don't know what to expect just yet. So people that don't know, the story of Laura Palmer is inspired by, or loosely inspired by, the mystery of Hazel Irene Drew, which was a young woman in upstate New York who was found floating in a creek or a pond. This is like early turn of the century. Don't quote me on any of this. I can't remember exactly, but this is like, you know, 1910 or something, you know, early 1900s. It, you know, made all the papers, and so, you know, young blonde woman found floating in water. A lot of suspects, whatever, I can't remember. Creepy guy down the street, maybe her uncle did it. She may or may not have many boyfriends at the time, but it was for 1900 or whatever, it was a media sensation. It was in all the papers and all that stuff. And Mark Frost born in New York, used to vacation in upstate New York, I think. But anyway, he was aware of this, you know, legend or this story for, you know, growing up. And as you can tell, there's parallels to Laura Palmer, and that's, you know, the unsolved mystery of the beautiful young girl found floating in the water. Obviously a Laura Palmer inspiration. So somebody, and I don't have this in front of me either, but somebody is making a documentary about it. I don't know what to expect. What I hope is that I think the reason that a lot of people still talk about her, obviously it's Twin Peaks related, right? So if you Google Hazel Irene Drew, it's usually connected to Twin Peaks. Like, oh, this is the story that inspired Laura Palmer, and oh, you guys remember Twin Peaks, the show? Well, that was kind of a real thing, and then they go into it. So a lot of the, you know, touching points are Twin Peaks related, and I think that what I hope, because I'm kind of a history guy, I'm not exactly a genius or a buff or anything. I'm not an expert on any, you know, period of history. However, when I like looking things up and reading and old newspapers and you know, well done documentaries. So I hope that they say, hey, this inspired Twin Peaks, kind of maybe at the beginning, but like I really want them to go deep, like I've seen some of the newspaper articles, you know, but like I want them to talk to historians. I want them to talk to people in the area. You know, what is the legend in that area? What do people believe about it? Is there something new we could learn about it? Is there a historian or two in the country or in that area in upstate New York that like really knows like all the, you know, details? Like, you know, is there a timeline? Can we like, I really want them to get in the weeds on the Hazel Irene Drew story. If it's a half hour or an hour long documentary about how it all relates to Twin Peaks, like, I don't know. I will watch it. I will support it. I think it's cool that they're doing it. Personally, I want to deep dive, get really into like the historical facts. We all know why it's inspired Twin Peaks because there's been 40 articles written about it. I want to learn something new. I want to learn something that I didn't know. That's what I want out of the movie. About Tree Fitty said, thanks for the heads up on the Blue Rose issue. Just ordered it for $3. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thanks for checking that out. Yeah, this one. So they have some of them, they don't, like the earlier issues 1, 2, and 3, some of them are out of print forever. Some of them are more, they did shorter runs, so they're more expensive. But this one, I think, yeah, you can get this for like $3 to $5 probably. So it's awesome. Firewalker said, you aren't the only one having issues getting paid by Google or YouTube. Well, that's good to know. Appreciate it. I don't want to make a big thing about it, but I was like, hey, it's been 3 months since I put up my last video and it was really big. And then I got a bunch of other views on my other videos. Like, shouldn't I be getting some money from Google? It says I'm owed this much money. And then every month it's like 0, 0, 0. I'm like, okay. My app says I should have a $100 check coming at some point, but you go online, you go onto the actual account, your actual page account where they're supposed to like report all that stuff, and it's just zeros everywhere. So Star Magnet said, if half of my subscribers gave you $1 a month, you could do this channel full time. Oh man, that'd be a dream of mine. Like, I have other plans for Take the Ring. Like if I only have so many episodes of Twin Peaks that I want to do. There's only so many things that like I've kind of outlined this whole channel. It's probably going to take me a few years to like get all these episodes done. But basically I've got, not everything's like written, perfected, but it's outlined. I have the episodes outlined. They all have notes. They all have everything I want to cover. I'm basically just writing a long book. It's like a book of Twin Peaks, and I'm doing it one chapter or one episode at a time. So I want to get this Twin Peaks episodes done. I want to talk about other movies. I want to interview people. I want to do, I'd love to do more live chats. I like to talk about, I'm a big sci-fi creature feature guy. I want to make videos on Creature from the Black Lagoon, and there's film historians even locally in my area that I would love to do stuff. So I would love to do this channel full time. I would love it. It would be amazing. But I know how things work, and I'm just gonna kind of keep doing what I'm doing and see what happens. Strenuous Orb says, what's up? Strenuous Orb is from the 119 podcast. You guys should check that out. I don't think they're doing any more podcasts. I don't think they're doing recording anything new, but they did a whole Twin Peaks series not a watch along, but they'd watch an episode and do it, or they'd watch an episode of the show and then they would record a podcast talking about it. I'm a guest on their Fire Walk With Me watch, and that's on my website too, or that's on Take the Ring YouTube page as well. So that was a good time. 119 podcast, check that out. Patrick Bailey says, as someone creating TP content, is it frustrating trying to work through the themes, content, etc., without something that will ever really feel like a conclusion? Yeah, for sure. So after the return was over and then the final dossier came out and I had started kind of writing notes and putting something together. Originally, I was just going to do a podcast, but I'm kind of a video guy, and I was like, well, I need to do a video because that'd be cooler for me. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out, how do you explain a show that can't be explained, right? How do you go out on a podcast or a video and say, well, this could be this, or this could be this, or this could be this, and I don't really know what this is. What I keep coming back to is like, what do we actually know based on what we actually see or what we are told, either in the show or the spin-off books. So if I'm going to talk about Laura Palmer, they say this, and this about her in the original series. Fire Walk With Me, this, and this happens. Jennifer Lynch wrote this book that really gets into her psyche, and you know, if you read the book and then you watch Fire Walk with Me, there's these kind of themes. She's obviously being abused, she's obviously this, she's you know, and then the supernatural stuff, I don't ever say like this is what it is. I'm like, some people think that Phillip Jeffries is, you know, this, or I believe that the ring is kind of like symbolic of the deal between the arm and Mike and Bob. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, I know for a fact that Ben Horne is the owner of the Great Northern Hotel with his brother Jerry. And I know that they have 2 kids, that Ben has 2 kids. And I know that he owns One-Eyed Jacks. And I know that he was in love with Laura Palmer too, based on what they said in the show. And you know, the Secret History novel by Mark Frost says this, this, and this. If you take all of that into context, Ben is kind of considered a bad guy who later has regrets and tries to reform himself. You know what I mean? So it's like, there are concrete things that we know about the show. There's stuff that's said, stuff that's on screen, stuff that's told. Now, like, what is the Red Room, right? That's like subjective and up for interpretation. That's how I try to do my videos. About Tree Fit, he said, do you have any cool Twin Peaks memorabilia or props? Yes and no. I don't have any props. I have a Secret History book, the Mark Frost hardback, that I take to conventions and things sometimes. So I have a bunch of autographs in my Secret History book. Like, that's my cool memorabilia. So I have like Cheryl Lee and Ray Wise and Kimmy and Harry and Sherilyn Fenn, Billy Zane, Alicia Witt, Kiefer Sutherland, Carl Stroiken, the giant fireman. I got him too. And I have them sign in the book kind of where they're mentioned, or where maybe their pictures are, or something like that. I'm trying to get to, I mean, now with COVID, who the hell knows, but trying to get to one of Kyle MacLachlan's wine tastings. Maybe I can get him to sign. Probably never gonna run into David Lynch. I'm thinking about writing to Mark Frost and begging him to let me mail it to him so he can sign it. When the book came out, he did a book tour. And I think he went to Chicago, might have been the closest place, but I was working or something. I couldn't go. So I missed Mark Frost on the book tour. David Lynch would just be like lightning in a bottle. I don't know how or when that would ever happen. But Kyle and Mark are doable, I think. But anyway, it's fun. It's not something I spend like tons of time circling the globe trying to get people to autograph stuff, but I'm working on it. A couple years ago, George Griffith, who's Ray Monroe in The Return, he was on Twitter asking people to help with some photos. He wanted some screen grabs from The Return, and I happened to be editing his stuff for my Phillip Jeffries video. So I tweeted at him, I said, hey, I'm actually got all your footage pulled up right now. Like, what do you need? So I sent him some screenshots, and he sent me a Christmas card. So that was pretty cool. So I got a couple signed pictures and a Christmas card from George Griffith, which I like that. That's pretty rad. I got the key, got the Great Northern key. My wife got me this trading card. It's from the UK. It's a Trumps game, it's like a card game. And they have all these, you know, different Twin Peaks stuff on it. My wife got me this for Christmas. This is pretty cool. And then like recently, like a month ago or a couple of months ago, Kyle MacLachlan reposted this on Instagram, and it blew up, I guess, and they're sold out of them now. So this is kind of like a hot thing, which my wife got me, you know, months beforehand. So I'm pretty excited about this guy. So yeah, I got some stuff, nothing too crazy, a couple autographs and stuff. Patrick Braley says, do you think Janie E and Sonny Jim were tulpas? I hear that a lot. I never really bought into it. I don't think so. I mean, some people think that whole Las Vegas thing doesn't exist, that Las Vegas is kind of a pocket world or an alternate dimension or whatever, and there's supporting evidence for that. I think there's timeline or calendar dates or something that show that, you know, or maybe car models. There's something that some people think that all of Las Vegas is kind of it's a separate world, like literally a separate world, like Odessa, Texas or something. So if that's true, then yeah, I guess they're created beings or something, right? Mark Frost talks about how the empty subdivision where Dougie is with Jade and the car explodes and the 119 lady and all that stuff. That was inspired. A lot of that was, he started writing some of this stuff after the 2008 crash. So you've got this whole like neighborhood of empty houses. That's kind of where some of that comes from. I don't think Janie E and Sonny Jim are tulpas personally. Maybe it's because I just choose to believe that, like I said, I think they're real people. I think Janie E is meant to be a real person. Like her speech at the loan sharks or whatever, you know, we're the 99%, we live in a dark age. And like, she's the one character that actually has kind of an arc, you know. She loves Dougie. I mean, there's a disconnect, right? Because he's kind of like an invalid, but she treats him like a regular person. I don't know. I mean, there's evidence either way. I don't personally believe it. I think if there's one human being in that entire season 3 that is a real person who's supposed to represent a real struggling woman, family, American, whatever, like probably Janie E, I think. Patrick Bailey says, the moment with the log lady and Fire Walk With Me is much more powerful if you've read the diary. Yeah, absolutely. I get comments all day, not all day. I do get comments on my videos sometimes like, oh, you read them, you think the Mark Frost books are relevant, you're an idiot. You know, David Lynch hasn't read the Mark Frost books, like, you know, what are you doing citing? I'm like, first of all, he's the co-creator of it. I always say David Lynch is an amazing filmmaker and he has his own career totally, but Twin Peaks is him and this other guy. And the other guy's name is Mark Frost, and Mark Frost is a real writer that really wrote for TV and movies, and he really has something to say. And if you're gonna say that The Secret History doesn't matter because David Lynch never read it, David Lynch never read The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer, written by his own daughter at his direction. So Lynch and Frost said, hey, we're gonna do a spin-off book about Laura Palmer, but we want it to be real personal and really just like, we want to pull people in and really show people her pain and trauma and really flesh out this character. And he gave it to his daughter, Jennifer Lynch, and she wrote this book. I personally know women that The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer is the most important thing to them. It's the most important thing to them in Twin Peaks world because it's so personal, and it's I mean, people think Fire Walk With Me is like, and it is Laura's pain and her trauma out on display, but you really want to get into the mind of a young person who's been abused, who's turned to drugs and prostitution and things like, it's heavy stuff, heavy stuff. The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer is more graphic than anything in Twin Peaks, and I know people that consider it their favorite thing or the most important thing or the thing that they hold most dear about Twin Peaks to them is The Secret Diary of Laura Palmer by Jennifer Lynch, which David Lynch never read, according to her. So David Lynch is an artist who lives in his own head, and he wants to approach Twin Peaks his own way. I don't know why, but you can't say because David Lynch hasn't read The Secret History that it's irrelevant, because it's not. You can't say that if David Lynch hasn't read the Laura Palmer diary, it makes it irrelevant, because it's not. And yeah, the scene with Laura Palmer and the log lady in Fire Walk With Me, if you've read the diary, it's like, that moment is like 10 times as big, I think. So does Patrick. It's tough because if you know me personally, I'm constantly railing on things like Star Wars and the Marvel movies. Not that they're bad, but I don't understand this scene. Like, why did this character do this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. It contradicts this, and this that we've already seen. Well, but you gotta read the comic, and then there's the Clone Wars cartoon. So if you've seen all the Clone Wars cartoon, then this all makes sense. And I'm always kind of like I think movies should be self-contained, which I think Twin Peaks is. But also Twin Peaks is more surreal. Twin Peaks is designed to be subjective and experienced on your own, right? So like, while I'll criticize Star Wars or the Marvel Universe or whatever, it's like, man, I don't want to read 50 comic books to understand what this scene is about. What's going on here, I should be able to understand on my own. That's me personally. But Fire Walk With Me works without the diary. It does, if the diary enhances that scene specifically. So I contradict myself because I get angry when I'm supposed to do a research project on some of these movies to figure out what the hell is going on. But Twin Peaks is designed for you to do your own research project to figure out what the hell is going on, right? You guys get it. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, moving on. Strenuous Orb said Lynch would be the first to tell you Frost is a more or less equal partner in Twin Peaks. He wouldn't have collaborated with Frost in The Return if that wasn't the case. Yeah, totally. I mean, and Frost says that too. When they wrote The Return, it was like writing the original pilot. It was both of them equally going back and forth. As they wrote that, Lynch and Frost wrote it over Skype, whatever, 2012 or 2013 when they started talking about it. So they would go back and forth. They would go each write a little bit and come together, and they would do these writing sessions over Skype. I would give anything to see just one, even like 10 minutes of them writing together, like how that would work. If you guys have ever seen Deadwood, there's some behind the scenes stuff in Deadwood, and it's David Milch, and he is kind of like in the writer's room, and he's like laying on the floor, and they've got the projected image of the script, and the room's like full of like probably a continuity person and assistants and other writers, and I forget who all is in the room, but it's just like 10 minutes of him like, well, what do you think of, you know, he'll throw out a line or two or three, or it's like a chunk of dialogue. Someone will type it up and they'll all sit there and read it, and then like back up, and he'll change it a little bit. Then he'll ask somebody like, what do you think of that? Like when you just read that, what was your first thought? And then they say something, and he's like, yeah, okay, let's keep that for now. And then they go, like, that's the best thing about Deadwood it's the best thing about the Deadwood DVDs or Blu-rays or whatever is watching David Milch get to write a little bit. So I would almost kill to have a recording of a Skype call of Lynch and Frost. Like, I don't care what scene it was, I don't care, just like, so does David Lynch like pitch an idea and Frost like maybe writes it out and reads it back, and he's like, yeah, that's cool, and then Frost pitches an idea and writes it down, and you know, like how did they put that together? That would have been awesome. That would be awesome to see. How do you feel about Twin Perfect's theory versus your own? I don't know, man. I've talked about this before. I think his video is cool. I like a lot of the observations in it. I don't personally have a real theory. Like, Twin Peaks for me is kind of fluid. I have different kind of ideas. I guess it depends on what you're talking about. Like, are you talking about what the finale is? Are you talking about what these certain things mean? I'm about to do a video about a meta theory that I like. It's kind of how I look at season 3, but I'm incorporating a bunch of people different, like kind of like the meta theories and stuff. I like meta critiques of things. However, a lot of times they don't inform the story. Like, they're cool for what they are, but if you look at everything like meta, then what are you watching? Then why are you enjoying what you're watching? The meta critique of Jaws is, well, this is a force of nature that man is trying to dominate. This is man trying to dominate nature, and they just can't do it. And that's what this movie is. And I'm like, well, cool, then I guess I just won't watch it. If that's what this is about, then we got it all figured out, right? Like, but like, you don't watch Jaws for like the meta thing. It's a bad example because Twin Peaks is very meta on a lot of different levels. So that's the thing. I don't hate it. I don't dislike his video. He makes a lot of cool points. I like a lot of it. There's a bunch of stuff in there that I really like. I would challenge anybody that thinks that Twin Perfect's video is gospel, rewatch the show and like, can you remember what when you see the jumping man in the thing and the convenience store scene, are you like, that's film editing? That's film editing is what that is. See, these creatures are all trapped in a TV because Twin Peaks is a show within a show. Like, you know what I mean? Or are you like, are you in the moment? Like, I have theories about different stuff and what things might mean or what they don't, but like when I'm watching it, and especially like, you in Mulholland Drive and stuff like that. Like when I'm in the moment, like I'm in the moment. I'm not sitting there like, well, you know, David Bowie's he's in this room and he's trying to explain to these people like where he's been, and I've been somewhere, and I'm like, and Carl Rod, like I've been places, and like, and Bowie's trying to break down like where he's been and what he's doing, and the guys are trying to figure out who he is, like, and so then like, is this a dream? Is this did he just time jump? Is this alternate universes? Like I've got all kinds of stuff going on in my head, and it feels, I just know what I'm kind of experiencing in my heart and in my mind. And I mean, you can go watch my Philip Jeffries video. I've got a whole, like what I think is going on with all of that stuff. I think those discussions are valid. I think those discussions are valuable. I like reading Metacritiques. I like Twin Perfect's video. But, you know, my favorite part of the Twin Perfect video is his kind of take on the ending of Fire Walk With Me and Laura Palmer, and how when she's in the red room at the end and the lights start flashing, that this is kind of like the TV screen at the beginning of Fire Walk With Me, how that this is, she's facing the TV, and she is witnessing that her death is integral to the birth of Twin Peaks. So it kind of like comes full circle. Like, so she understands now that her death is what spawned this TV show, because in his mind, or in the greater theory, it's the show, literally a show, literally within a show. I love that. This is my favorite part. I was, oh man, that's cool. That is awesome. That is awesome. And then a couple weeks later, I went to a movie theater and watched Fire Walk With Me, and I was kind of like waiting for that part, like, oh, this is the part. So like, because I hadn't seen it since I watched the theory. And I watched it, and it came on, and she starts laughing and crying, and the lights are coming on, and like, I didn't feel that at all. That was my favorite part of the video. I was waiting for it to kind of make that connection, but everything leading up to it, and the emotional swell and all the stuff that I was feeling, and then like the light starts flashing, but then it instantly cuts to the angel, and the angel's illuminated. So you know what, to me, the whole theme of Laura finding peace or salvation or whatever, you know, like that just overwhelms all that stuff, all the like kind of like the meta stuff. So like I just didn't, I don't know. I'm just saying, take it for what you guys want, like what you get out of it. But I would challenge you to watch that 6 hours of video that he put out, and then watch the show again. And like, see, Laura's laughing. She's laughing and smiling and crying. It's not because her soul is at peace and she's found salvation. It's she realizes that her death is the birth of the original Twin Peaks. Sucks the fun out of it, right? Some of that stuff is awesome. It's not just Twin Perfect. I like lots of people's theories about all kinds of stuff in Twin Peaks. That's what makes this show special. The fact that every other channel, Cornpone Flicks, Wow Inch Wow, like everybody's got their own take on it. Some people it's super meta, some people it's really straightforward, some people don't care about any of that stuff. They just like the FBI and the coffee and the pie and stuff, you know. I got friends that don't care about any of that stuff. They only like the Red Room surreal stuff. That's their favorite stuff. They don't even know what that means, and it's still their favorite stuff, and that's why they watch it. Like, I watch Ed and Norma. To me, Ed and Norma is one of the great like TV romances ever, and I really love the actors, and I really love the characters, and I mean, it's like Romeo and Juliet, and it's like it tugs at your heartstrings, and it's like it's bad luck meets bad timing, and it's frustrating because you all know that they're meant to be together, and they've run into all this stuff, and then it works and they come together, then it falls apart, and in the return is 25 years later and they're 70 years old and they're still dealing with it. Oh God, Jesus. To me, Ed and Norma is one of the great television romances of all time. and I will never not think that way. And I literally cried in season 3 when they get their final scene. It was amazing. But some people would believe that that's not really about true love. This is David Lynch clowning on television romance, and he's trying to make it sappy to clown on melodrama and how studio politics interfered in what he really wanted to do. Like, not me. That's all I'm saying. Patrick Braley says, not everything has to be meta, but at the very least, we can probably agree that what happens at the end is some sort of self-reflection on the idea of coming back all these years. Oh, yeah, coming back all these years later. The Return is a scathing critique of nostalgia. It's also these guys in the twilight of their years looking back on this television world that they created versus the time. They think that we live in a dark age now. Did Twin Peaks back then reflect a reality? Did it reflect what was really going on? Because we all look back at the 90s as like this ideal time, but like, was it really? You know, was the original show in the 90s, but really throwing back to like the idyllic 50s? And were they wrong about portraying it that way? Nostalgia, history, getting older, facing death. These are written by 2 guys that are facing death more than a 30-year-old man is. These are 75-year-old men looking back on their work and their life. There's 100 ways you can read The Return, especially the ending. Like a million ways to read it. Yeah, I don't even want to get into that. I mean, Laura screaming at the end, Carrie Page, who was probably Laura, I believe has a realization moment. She looks at the house. Cooper says, what year is it? Something triggers her. She looks at the house. She hears her mother's voice calling her name. And I think it all comes back to her and all of her trauma comes back. And that's where the scream comes from. Now, what the lights going out and what that all means. My Talk About Judy video based on the Arbach theory, which is a narrative critique of what can be deduced that's going on in The Return based on what we are shown, has a theory about that, which I agree with narratively, but symbolically, metaphorically, metaphysically, like there's all kinds of stuff that's going on there. Mustafa Ansari says, for example, I'm really interested in and never see anyone talk about the trauma of Indigenous people in relation to American history is partially reflected by Frost's interest in usage of the Native. Yeah, there's a huge chunk of the Secret History novel that is all about the colonization and the destruction of the Native Americans. All the other parts, the UFOs and Jack Parsons and this and that, like I can make connections to things that happened in The Return or stuff that was referenced in the original show. The Chief Joseph stuff, other than the thematic Native American stuff, the imagery and Hawk, for example, I can't find where it like narratively like kind of connects. And I really think that that's the part of Mark Frost wanting to put that in history. Like a lot of the Secret History is like real history. So Lewis and Clark, 90% of that is true. It's just that he works in a little bit about the ring and how they were in the Pacific Northwest. You know what I mean? So a lot of the Secret History is real history that Mark Frost has tweaked to work into the world of Twin Peaks. But the Chief Joseph stuff, from what I can tell, is pretty straightforward, like really straight out of history. And I think that Mark Frost put that in there to remind people. I think that he thinks that that's important. I think that he knows that Twin Peaks has a lot of Native imagery in it. And I think that that's his wanting to contribute to the furthering of people's understanding of Native suffering, I think. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I believe that's an actual document. I have to look again. But the Chief Joseph thing, I believe is like a real thing. And I just think that Frost put that in there to remind people like, hey, I know all the paintings on the walls and Hawk and stuff is cool, but like these were real people. And here's some real documents. And I want you guys to read this and like read it and remember it. And it'll forever be in my book. Symbolism and the mythology and things in pop culture often dilutes the importance of it or the message or whatever, but I think that's why he put it in there, because he thinks that it's really important. I think on that note, I'm going to end. Thanks a bunch. Appreciate it. Have a good night.